The FIA Formula 2 Championship is the final stepping stone before Formula 1, at least in theory it is. It is nonetheless a great series that throws up some amazing racing, even if you have to battle the moral dilemma of knowing that even though the drivers are forking out about 2 to 3 million a year, the series is still grossly unfair with crappy politics and uneven car performance. Spec series you say? Equal cars you reckon? Yeah, keep telling yourself that. But without wishing to whinge for too much longer, we can at least be in agreement that last year's Formula 2 Championship was an awesome one at that. A grid stacked with talent, including a few drivers who would go on to compete in Formula 1 for 2021. Incidentally, 2 of them would end up driving for a team that has proven that 45 years of the Cold War meant nada. The 2 drivers in question are Mick Schumacher and Nikita Mazepin. Both finished 1st and 5th in the Formula 2 Championship in 2020 respectively. Another driver by the name of Yuki Tsunoda had finished 3rd overall and was described as one of the drivers of the year performance-wise. He also got into Formula 1 by way of the AlphaTauri team thanks to the Red Bull and Honda connections. Nestled in amongst those 3 are 2 drivers who are part of the Ferrari Driver Academy. Finishing in 4th place was Robert Schwartzman, a very fast young driver who has been earmarked for future success and is also considered a shoo-in for a future F1 drive. The other FDA driver would be vice champion for F2 and was lauded throughout the entire year by experts and people who were not experts. He came close to an F1 seat, although lost out due to circumstances seemingly beyond his control. The driver in question is Callum Ilott.
Hi, I'm a racing driver.
Throughout the year, that was all we were hearing about. Callum Ilott this, Callum Ilott that. Callum Ilott deserves a Formula 1 seat. Wait, does he? See, I wasn't totally sold on this, and I say that knowing that he's likely going to see this. And hey Callum, if you are watching this right now, hi. Not that Ilott was a bad driver in any slight, but I decided that since the new F1 season is set to get underway, I figured to go back and look through his career to see whether or not Callum Ilott deserved a shot at Formula 1. So, since we're trying to gauge Ilott's talents as a driver, a good place to start would be all the way at the beginning. As you may have guessed, Ilott began his racing career in karts. He was certainly not short of results, winning a magnitude of different championships in his time. He was a prominent driver in the world karting scene, which included the likes of, oh no, this guy again. The Red Bull scouts took note of Ilott's pace, and although not officially announced at this point, Red Bull took Ilott under their wing ahead of his car racing debut in 2015. He would be linked up with Carlin in the FIA Formula 3 Championship, although first, he would compete in the Toyota Racing Series in New Zealand at the start of the year. Now, driving with E-Tech Motorsport, winning the championship wasn't really expected. That coupled with the fact that his car racing debut would take place in what was effectively a Formula 3 car, it was kind of trial by fire in that regard. But as the season drew on, his pace was getting up there, even if his 16th place finish in the standings made for grim reading. But with that out of the way, Callum would be thrust into the FIA Formula 3 Championship. Now, this was a little unusual under normal circumstances, but considering this is the Red Bull Junior team we're talking about, logic does sometimes take a back seat. Expectations were high even if he was greener than goose, which is not good news for a kid with minimal experience in the car. Alas, Ilott struggled to get many notable results, save for one podium at the Nürburgring. But on the whole, he was mostly outshone by teammate George Russell, and this was enough reason for Red Bull to drop him from his junior program at the end of the year. But despite being given the flick from Dr. Marco's perpetual pit of doom, Ilott signed on with Van Amersfoort Racing to compete in the same championship for the 2016 season. And immediately, results were starting to show for young Callum, taking the win at the second race of the season at Paul Ricard. At the end of the championship, he finished 6th overall, the best placed of the Van Amersfoort drivers in what was a very solid effort and was his 2nd year in the game. He also got his 2nd win of the year at the Red Bull Ring, which was kind of ironic, although it wasn't all smooth sailing. He stalled at the start of the first round finale while in a good position, and his results from the season finale was, to put it nicely, a disaster. And then there was what happened at the Norris Ring. After locking the rears heading into the hairpin, Ilott slammed into the side of Joel Ericsson's Dallara, forcing them both out of the race. Ericsson wasn't too pleased about being blindsided, but that was nothing compared to what one other character did earlier that weekend. During free practice 2, Nikita Mazepin was setting a time on new tyres before coming across Ilott, who, in his view, was dawdling and ruined his lap. Now, Mazepin is renowned for being a cool, calm, collected individual in times like these. You didn't buy that, didn't you? Nah, there is a reason why I brought this incident up, and that's because when the session was over, Mazepin got out of his car and approached Ilott to exchange words, and other things, as can be seen here in this dramatic reconstruction. Mazepin was given a one-race vacation, but it kinda set the tone for Ilott's weekend. Aside from that incident, however, a good showing at the Masters of F3 and Macau Grand Prix capped off a pretty decent season all up. 2017 would be Ilott's third full-time campaign in the FIA F3 series, although this time he would be with the formidable Prema Power Team outfit. Throughout the year, Ilott would take 6 wins, 10 pole positions, and would finish 4th overall in the standings. He once again ran strongly in Macau, where he led the race right up until midway where he encountered problems and threw himself out of contention. He also made a one-off appearance in the Formula 2 category that year. Driving for Trident, he convincingly outpaced his teammate Nabil Jeffrey throughout the weekend, although this didn't really mean too much in the grand scheme of things considering his ambitions lay in the GP3 series. Ilott would join ART Grand Prix alongside Jake Hughes, Antoine Hubert, and that boxer from earlier. In 2018, ART were the dominant team. They were expected to win the title, and that's exactly what they did. The only thing is, while Ilott would take 2 wins at the Red Bull Ring and Paul Ricard, he would ultimately finish 3rd overall, behind Hubert and Mazepin. An awful round in Sochi, as well as being disqualified in Monza, didn't really help if we're honest, and for the next 2 years, Ilott would launch 2 more assaults at the Macau Grand Prix, and unfortunately, much like his other attempts, he would qualify well, only for his race results to be miserable for whatever reason. For 2019, however, Ilott would graduate full-time to the FIA Formula 2 Championship with Charouz. Now, Charouz were never the fastest team on the grid, but Ilott would achieve 2 podiums that year, as well as a pole position in Monza to finish 11th in the standings. While it may not seem like much on paper, it was still pretty decent given that these cars aren't known to be very nice to rookies. Now, everything up to this point may not seem particularly remarkable to the average viewer. Sure, he was a part of the Ferrari Academy. He had a lot of speed on board, and plenty of people raving about his speed. However, despite all this, he had not won a single championship in cars up to this point. How are we to convince people of this guy's talent? Well, heading into the 2020 season, there was some amount of expectation given that he would be teaming up with Guang Yu Zhou at UNI Virtuosi, a team that was perhaps better suited to give Callum a run at the title. And right off the bat, he made his mark, winning the first race in Austria to kick off the season in fine style. Over the next few rounds, Ilott established some consistent results, despite some fluctuating form, to help keep him in the championship hunt. Buoyed too by a lights to flag victory at Silverstone. By the midway point of the season, Ilott was in the lead of the championship and was beginning to draw the attention of those within the paddock. There was talk of him getting into Formula 1, although he had a few obstacles in the way. I'll explain most of these later, but one that will be crucial to bring up at this time is Mick Schumacher. Son of the great Michael Schumacher, Mick is a part of the same Ferrari driver academy that Callum is. Now, one of the perks of being part of the academy is that you could get a shot at a Formula 1 seat, but of course, motor racing isn't really that simple. Although the door was open for Callum in that regard, he just had to convince the powers that be that he was the better option. And he did. However, elsewhere on the grid, Mixter was performing his Superman tactics that he displayed in Formula 3, coming into form midway through the season and racking up points. The other issue for Ilott was that by the time of the round in Spain, things started to go a little bit pear-shaped. Failing to reach the podium until the sprint race in Monza, Ilott was now just 6 points ahead of Schumacher with 4 rounds remaining. Getting nerfed by Tsunoda in Spa didn't help, getting front wing damage in the first race in Mugello also put him in the back foot, and heading into Sochi, he had lost the championship lead to Mixter. While that round wasn't an overwhelming success, he was at least 22 points from the lead with 2 rounds remaining. The championship was still on. He started proceedings well enough by taking pole position, with Schumacher a fair way down the road. Finishing in second for the feature race, Ilott had closed the gap to Schumacher to just 12 points. With 3 races to go, there was still plenty of time to take the lead. All that was needed was for Ilott to not crash into Daravala in the sprint race. Bruh. With these gymnastics, Schumacher had stretched the lead in the championship. It was now 14 points between the two heading into the final round at the Bahrain Knot Oval. While Ilott would put on a valiant effort throughout that weekend, it was not enough. Schumacher would take the title win, with Ilott retaining second by just 1 point over Tsunoda. It was still a fine effort though, especially given that he had trounced his teammate Zhou, and also given the accusations being flung around that Ilott had the worst engine on the grid. Now, while this may sound like hearsay and conjecture, the thing about motorsport is that if a story you hear from the paddock sounds this pathetic, odds are it's probably true. In the weeks following this, Schumacher was announced to drive for the Haas Formula 1 team for 2021. Ilott was briefly in the frame for a Formula 1 seat too, but with Alfa Romeo extending Raikkonen and Giovinazzi's contracts, and with Haas having drafted in the Mazepins to help keep their heads above water, Ilott was left without a Formula 1 drive for 2021. It's kind of a cruel irony when you think about it, but in the end, Ilott would be announced as Ferrari's test driver for 2021. But a lot of people were disappointed with not seeing Ilott on the grid full time. However, upon reflection, with everything laid out on the table, we arrive at the question of whether Callum Ilott deserves a shot at Formula 1. So, does he? Yeah. Nah. Maybe. That wasn't really an answer, wasn't it? Anyways, thank you all for watching. Drop a comment below, subscribe to the channel if you're awesome, and always remember, keep it respectful, be wholesome, don't be a marnus, and as always, I'll see you all later.